Blog Talk Radio. Blog Talk Radio.
Franchise interviews from Easton, Pennsylvania to Sydney, Australia. You're listening to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews. Welcome to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews has been giving an up-close, behind-the-scenes look at franchising and entrepreneurship. Listen to interviews with franchisers, franchisees, franchise authors, franchise experts, and attorneys. And now, welcome your host, Marty McDermott, and Franchise Interviews.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to a very special edition of Franchise Interviews, where for over 9 years, we've been asking the entrepreneurs one-on-one. I'm your host, Marty McDermott. I'm the president of Franchise Interviews, and we have a great show today. We're meeting with John Neitzel, the CEO of Bar Louie. And Bar Louie is a national collection of neighborhood bars featuring handcrafted cocktails and spirits, delectable food, and an inviting atmosphere. We're going to talk to John about that in just a moment on Franchise Interviews. So stick around because we have a great show.
Franchise Teacher.
Would you like to know how to franchise your concept or grow your franchise business?
Meet the experts at Franchise Teacher.
The goal of Franchise Teacher is to teach, coach, consult, and advise. The team of experts at Franchise Teacher will evaluate your business model and present you with a winning business strategy.
Franchise Teacher will help you decide whether or not your concept works and if it's franchisable. Franchise Teacher is proud to have over 30 years of experience in franchising as both franchisees and franchisors.
Franchise Teacher are developers of over a dozen franchise systems, which include brick and mortar as well as home-based concepts of nearly 3,000 combined franchise locations.
Whether you need to add more units or get more customers, Franchise Teacher can help. We will teach.
Franchise Teacher will help you learn our proven system.
Coach.
Franchise Teacher will help you provide a game plan to succeed.
Consult.
Franchise Teacher will make sure you stay on track.
And advise.
Franchise Teacher will help you learn from our over 30 years of experience in franchising as both franchisees and franchisors. Take advantage of our free, no-obligation phone consultation. Simply go to franchiseteacher.com or call us at 561-385-3032.
That's franchiseteacher.com or call us at 561-385-3032.
Hi, this is Connie McDermott, Administrative Assistant for Franchise Interviews, LLC, and you're listening to Franchise Interviews.
Are you looking for a franchise that delivers? Businesses will always need shipping, and for more than 25 years, loyal customers have depended on Unishippers for reliable savings and exceptional customer service. Unishippers is focused on just one thing: helping small and medium-sized businesses save time and money on all their shipping needs. And as the largest reseller of complete shipping services in the country, we have the buying power to ensure that we succeed. The Unishippers franchise offers low startup costs, no equipment or real estate required because they're not retail, residual income, and a quality of life and work-life balance. For more information on becoming a Unishippers franchisee, go to www.unishippers.com and click Franchise Opportunities or call Franchise Development at 801-708-5822. That's 801-708-5822. Franchise Interviews. From Easton, Pennsylvania to Sydney, Australia, you're listening to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to a very special edition of Franchise Interviews, where for over 9 years we've been asking the entrepreneurs one-on-one. I'm your host, Marty McDermott. I'm the president of Franchise Interviews, and as we were saying earlier, we have a great show today. We're meeting with John Neitzel, the CEO of Bar Louie. And Bar Louie is a national collection of neighborhood bars featuring handcrafted cocktails and spirits, delectable food, and an inviting atmosphere. Hi, John. How you doing? Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Oh, thank you, John. We always like to ask our guests where you're calling from this morning.
I'm in Addison, Texas.
Oh, nice. How's the weather there today, John?
A little chilly, but it's supposed to be 70. It's supposed to be nice.
Wow, that's fantastic. Okay, that's great. Well, our listeners may not know it, but you have a very impressive background, John. Maybe, you could talk a little bit about your background, what you were doing in the past.
Sure. I had the pleasure of growing up in the TGI Fridays system. I worked for Fridays for 28 years.
Wow.
Started off as a manager and worked my way up to president of both the international and the U.S. business, and left them back in the middle of 2010 to join Bar Louie.
That's something. I wanted to tell you, I met my wife actually in a TGI Friday. My wife
was
going to make sure I told you that. So.
Which one?
It was one in Sayreville, New Jersey, on Route 9. So that place, and it's still there, in fact. So that place has special memories for us. So my wife said, make sure that you tell him that we met there.
Very nice.
So I thought you'd like that. Yeah. How is this experience? How's the Bar Louie experience different from your prior experiences you've had, John?
It's pretty similar. When I started with Fridays, I think we had 50 locations, and I left. We had over 1,500. And so it was very similar. When Fridays first began, it was very much an adult concept.
Right.
No kids menu, no high chairs, any of that sort of stuff. And so it was it was built to serve baby boomers.
Right.
And when I joined Bar Louie, we had 36 locations, and so small company. We just opened our 108th today, and so I think so I would say somewhat similar in terms of taking something that's unique and highly differentiated that is small, and now we're getting pretty good sized.
That's fantastic. I mean, for someone who's never been in a Bar Louie, John, I mean, how do you describe it? I mean, the target audience is a bit different, than a TGI Fridays, where it's kind of, as you mentioned, over time, it's shifted to probably, I guess you could say, more family-oriented type of atmosphere. Bar Louie is a bit different, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's probably the most difficult question that I get asked is, who is Bar Louie like? And I think the reason it's so difficult is we are highly differentiated. So there really isn't a national player who is similar to us. We compete more with local independents than we do with national brands. And so the way I describe it is we have we're a local bar and eatery. We've got incredible handcrafted cocktails, dynamic beer selection. 100% of our food is scratch cooking, so the only reason we have a microwave is to microwave popcorn for our truffle butter popcorn. And then we create this really urban, comfortable, but kind of upscale atmosphere for our guests, and it's designed in a way that it's really easy to accommodate people who want to socialize. And so if you think about casual dining today, it's a lot of tables for 2 and tables for 4, and every once in a while they'll throw in a table for 5, where our average table sizes are larger. We're really cognizant of creating different seating areas for people to congregate. The average guest spends 2 hours and 15 minutes at our place. If you contrast that to casual dining, the average guest is probably in there for 45 minutes to an hour. And so people use us far more to socialize. Than for functional. So while we're functional, we do a great job with service and execution. People aren't there for just the typical casual dining experience. Let me have a drink, let me have an appetizer, let me have my meal, and bring me my check. People are there for longer periods of time.
That's fantastic. The old school model of franchising, John, is that a franchise in Portland, Oregon was really the same as a franchise in Portland, Maine, but Bar Louie is really taking a different approach when it comes to franchising. Did you want to talk a little bit about that approach?
Yeah, we have a huge guiding principle, or really two. I would say number one, and first and foremost, is that we want to remain local. And the way we do that is we create a freedom within a framework. And so let me give you some examples. So we have no two Bar Louies that are alike. Or the same, and so the atmosphere and the elements are the same, but we don't have a prototype. Even if we go into new space, we challenge ourselves to think about how do we make each one unique. How do we use as many local elements as possible, whether that be wood or stone or anything that's local to the area. The menu is identical in all locations. However, we have 30 to 40 draft beers on tap. We control 10, and we ask that the other 20 to 30 are chosen locally. Wow. We ask that each one of our Bar Louies carry 12 vodkas. We say here are 5 that you must carry, and 7 that you'll want to choose locally. And so the promotions that people do locally, the entertainment, which most of our Bar Louies do one day a week, are all done locally. Because for us to sit here in Addison, Texas, trying to tell somebody in Portland, Oregon, or Portland, or in the Northeast, we'd be nuts. And so we like whether it be company operations or with franchisees to have people that enjoy freedom within a framework versus people who have to have the full script, if you will.
It makes a lot of sense, John. I mean, and you've been doing this a long time now. I mean, you think this will be a new trend in franchising because, the way you describe the whole thing. I mean, the quality, of course, is always the same. The menu is always the same, but it's customized to that particular area or that particular region. I mean, do you think this will be a new trend in franchising? I mean, it is very clever.
I don't know. I think it's certainly more difficult. So I don't know if it'll be a new trend. I think it's certainly a huge portion or, a huge part of our recipe for success.
Right.
Whether it be in our company locations or our franchise locations, the opportunities for sales and who lives and works near our Bar Louies are somewhat different. And so when I think about who the average guest was at TGI Fridays, it was far more consistent across the U.S. by day part.
Right.
Than what you'd find in a Fridays, and so we've got at a Bar Louie, and so we've got 25% of our locations are in urban centers, downtown Chicago, downtown Minneapolis, etc.
Right.
And 75% are out in the suburbs, and some do 25% of their sales after 10 o'clock at night, and some do 10%. And so what one needs for success may be very different than another, and I think our challenge is how do you have standards and require people to deliver against set standards, but give enough freedom where people can be successful based on their set of circumstances. So I don't know if it'll be a trend. It's here to stay for Bar Louie because I think it's a key to success, whether it be company owned or franchise owned. And I think those individuals who need to live in a world that is super rigid, we're probably not the right brand for them.
Absolutely. How many units do you see, in the United States, John? I mean, you mentioned you're over, 100 at this point. I mean, how many you envision for the whole country?
We think there's over 400 opportunities. Now, whether there'll ever be 400 will be determined based on real estate availability, but there's 400 markets that we believe we can be in. But again, it's subject to whether we can find adequate real estate.
Sure, absolutely. Because, there is more space, of course, required for a Bar Louie. I mean, how much space is required to open up one, John?
A typical Bar Louie is about between 6,000 and 7,000 square feet. But our current portfolio, we have our smallest Bar Louie is 2,400 square foot, and our largest is 14,000. So we have a ton of flexibility.
Right.
I would say the vast majority are in the 6,000 to 7,000 square foot range.
That's interesting. As far as franchisees go, John, who are you looking for? What types of characteristics or experience do they need to have to, get into something like this?
We like somebody who's been in the hospitality and or retail industries.
Right.
They don't necessarily have to have been in casual dining. We've got a couple of our franchisees who own hotels and who've done a great job managing hotels and expanding within Bar Louie. We've got a couple of quick service franchisees who have demonstrated the ability to operate successful national brands, and they kind of want to step up in terms of investment and sales and returns.
Okay.
So I would say people who have who have an experience in the kind of the retail and or hospitality industry is a big want for us.
Okay. And is this still, being a franchise, I mean, of course there is, still training, of course. I mean, how does the training work, John? I mean, do they typically come to headquarters for training? Is that how it works?
Yeah, so training will happen, and we have certified training locations, so all the training will happen in a certified training location. There's time spent here in the support center, so there's a week that's spent here. And so I would say for the owners, it's probably a couple of weeks. If the owner is the operator, it could be 6 to 8 weeks of training.
Okay, that's fantastic. Is there such a thing? I mean, for our listeners, how would you describe a typical day, to our listeners, John? I mean, as far as owning a Bar Louie, I mean, what is that like?
It depends. I'll contrast. So I think there's two different experiences. So we've got an amazing franchisee, Frank Sweeney, who's up in Mishawaka, Indiana, who has just opened his second Bar Louie, and so his world has changed. But for the longest time, for the last 5 years, his day was very similar to what one of our general managers' day was like, and so he would he would make sure he was staffed and ordering was taking place, and he actually operated the location. And in December, he opened up his second location in Greenwood, Indiana, and now his job is somewhat different because now it's more supervising and managing 2 locations while he's out looking for his third. And so I think it depends on size and scale. If you were like Zubin and Anthony, who's one of our franchisees who have multiple locations, their day is very different than somebody who's running one location.
That's fantastic. You've been involved in this business, this industry, I mean, you for such a long time now, John, and the majority of our listeners, we call them aspiring franchipreneurs. I mean, most of our listeners know they want to get into franchising, but we find that, in doing the show 9 years now, I mean, most of them don't even know where to begin because there's just so much out there. I mean, from all of your experience, what advice would you give to them in their quest to buy a franchise?
I would say 2 things. One, first is make sure whoever you're choosing has you have a reasonable chance of having a good return on your investment.
Okay.
Start there so you don't have to worry about money.
Right.
And then number 2, whatever you choose, make sure you can fall in love with it. And so if we think about it at Bar Louie, if you can't fall in love with the Bar Louie brand and be as I guess emotionally connected to the brand as we are, you're unlikely to have the sort of success that you'd like to have.
Right.
So those are my 2 pieces of advice: is make sure you can get a good return on your investment, and make sure whoever it is you're with you can absolutely love. Because I can only imagine a world where whether it be a franchisee or me or anybody in our company who just thinks about it as transactional, because you won't get the same sort of fulfillment.
And I imagine you must love this industry. I mean, in following your career, John, there must be something about this particular industry that you love, isn't there? Because you've been doing.
Well, there is. I think that if you're an immediate gratification junkie, like most of us in the restaurant business are,
right.
This is the best place, because guests and team members and investors will all tell you how you're doing very, very quickly, and so your ability to affect change is amazing. So I think if you're an immediate gratification junkie, this is a great industry for you.
And Bar Louie definitely has that energy too, doesn't it? I mean, looking at the videos, going on the website, I mean, it's certainly it's an experience, isn't it, John?
It's interesting, and I think what's fun about our brand is that it's very social in nature. Mm-hmm. Who our guests are fairly diverse in terms of who they are and the incomes that they have. And so I think about it this way. So the typical guest at a Bar Louie is 25 to 54 years old. There's $75,000 median incomes. 51% are women, highly educated, and so that's the vast majority of our guests. But if you think about that, who uses us throughout the course of the day changes somewhat. And so I would say the average age of our guest at happy hour is probably in the 45 to 50-year-old range.
Right.
And then the average age of our guest after 10 o'clock at night is more like my daughter's age, and they're both in their 20s.
Interesting.
And because those 50-year-olds are asleep at midnight. So I think so we have broad appeal, and that's the fun part of our business is that the business, while the atmosphere and the food and what have you is the same. It does sort of change throughout the course of the day, and as we get later in the night, the lights come down a little bit, the music goes up a little bit, and the music that we're playing late night is geared more towards the younger end of the millennials.
Sure.
Than what we play at happy hour is for folks more my age. And so I think that's the fun part of being at a Bar Louie is it kind of evolves throughout the course of the day.
Where do you envision Bar Louie like 3 to 5 years down the road, John? I mean, do you picture this concept? You mentioned 400 here, in this country. I mean, do you picture the concept going international at some point?
Not anywhere in the near term, no. And so I think we've got enough to do to occupy all of our energies in the next 4 or 5 years. Down the road, there could be a possibility, but I think in the near term we want to focus on the U.S.
That's fantastic. What's the best way for our listeners, John, to get more information on Bar Louie and the franchise itself? Is there a particular website that you'd like them to go to?
Yeah, if you go to www.barlouie.com, you can see all about what our guest would see, and there's a franchising icon that you can click as well, and that'll get you in touch with Jill Szymanski, who's in charge of franchise development. Okay. And you can contact her, and she'll get back with you pretty quickly.
That's fantastic. I want to thank you again for coming on the show, John. I know you have a very busy schedule, and it was a privilege and an honor for me to finally get to speak with you. I think this is a great concept, and I'd really like to invite you back next year as you continue to grow. I think this is great.
Well, I'll take you up on that, Marty. Tell your wife I said hi, and
I will.
I'll be happy to hear that. Bar Louie.
You got it. Thank you so much, John, for coming on the show. And we'll be right back with more franchise interviews.
Franchisers, are you looking to reach aspiring entrepreneurs looking to buy a franchise? Are you looking to reach a highly educated audience on franchising? For over 8 years, Franchise Interviews has been giving an up-close, behind-the-scenes look at franchising and entrepreneurship through our website, franchiseinterviews.com, where you can hear and read interviews as well as get tips from some of the most successful sources in franchising. Our weekly franchise radio show where each week you get to hear a new interview with franchisers, franchisees, franchise authors, franchise experts, and attorneys, and our podcast, Great Quotes in Franchising. For more information, go to franchiseinterviews.com or call us at 610-905-2919. That's 610-905-2919.
Hi everyone, this is Marty McDermott from Franchise Interviews, and welcome to another edition of Great Quotes in Franchising, where each podcast you get to hear a great quote in franchising. We've been hosting Franchise Interviews now over 8 years and over 400 shows, and during that time we've had some incredible quotes on our show. Today you're going to get to hear from Chris Simic, who is the founder of FranchiseTeacher.com, and Chris has over 30 years of business and franchise experience as an independent business owner, a franchisee, and a franchisor. And Chris said something very profound that we haven't heard on our show in over 8 years. He mentioned that you have to almost work harder to fail at franchising than to succeed in franchising, and he explains why.
Most people, about 90% I think I've seen, buy a business other than they first looked at.
Wow, that's amazing.
So
it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, that's a big number too, isn't it, Chris? Most people, they go in with these certain expectations and they come out with something different, and I find that fascinating.
I absolutely, it never ceases to astound me, but I think that speaks to the value of franchising as a business model and a business method, because people don't have to be in something just because they know it. And quite candidly, sometimes getting involved in a business that you would rather do that you were not involved in allows you the luxury of taking a new career path and to develop something you never would have had the opportunity to had it not been systematized and prioritized for you. In franchising it's said that you have to really almost work harder to fail than to succeed, because if you have a good franchise system, if you follow directions, you have to almost purposely not follow them to not do well.
That's true. That's fantastic. We have this great quote in franchising. I think we're going to put that one in there, Chris. I think that's very original, and it's very true. What advice would you give to our listeners? We find that most of them, they're just beginning their search to buy a franchise, Chris, and we find that, most of them just simply, they don't even know where to begin, like you were saying. What advice would you give to them?
I do when I speak to people looking at franchise. I give them three different pieces of advice. One, make sure you're looking for a business for the right reason. A lot of people have things happen in their life. They lose a job or something happens, and they react and maybe say, well, okay, maybe I'll go buy a business. That may not be the reason to do it versus having the luxurious selectivity that here's my opportunity that was created by some adversity. Second thing is that they have to make sure that they are able to be franchisees, that not everybody is designed to be able to follow the systems, procedures, and the processes it takes to be a successful franchise owner. And then I tell them quite candidly is pick a couple of the industries and the price ranges that may have interest to you, and then kind of pin down from there, either using the resources of a consultant or a broker or a team member, or on their own. Either way, but I think that if they take their time, follow the steps, and do it for the right reasons, they'll be on a much smoother pathway to success in owning their own business.
That's well said. What's in the future then for Franchise Teacher, Chris? I mean, where do you see the company 3 to 5 years down the road?
Well, Marty, we've been extremely fortunate and blessed that the business has been around, through Century Franchise Group for many years, and our new FranchiseTeacher.com has taken off. We're representing right now, 7 plus brands. I think in 5 years, our focus will really be even more fine-tuned as the consumer or the prospective business owner is looking for more and more specific information. Breaking down to teach, coach, consult, and advise, I think will be a way for us to assist people in what they need. People again don't know what they don't know, but I think the information overload sometimes discourages people too early. They say, this is too much for me to process. If we can break it down into bite-sized pieces, I think more and more people, especially the younger generation, who are looking for the advice and the information they want when they want it, I think is going to do nothing more than continue. Then our next business venture, which launches at the end of this year, is looking to capture all the different franchise brands around the world and put them into one place. So we're looking forward to a future. And franchising is going nowhere but growing. As you been on a long time too, the number of franchise opportunities, and the world's getting to be a smaller place. I think you're going to find a lot of opportunities coming in and going out of different marketplaces in different countries, accessible to more people.
That's fantastic. What's the best way, Chris, for our listeners to get more information on FranchiseTeacher.com? Obviously, FranchiseTeacher.com, but any numbers you'd like them to call or email addresses?
Well, actually, we appreciate www.franchiseteacher.com. And my business partner, Dave, and I offer them the free 1-hour consultation. Fill out the form and take advantage of it.
That's fantastic. I want to thank you again, Chris, for finally coming on the show. I've been following your career for a long time now, and I have just been very impressed with everything that you've done. So when I saw this, I mentioned to you we don't typically call people to come on the show, but I had to have you specifically on the show. So it was an honor and a privilege to have you on the show today.
Marty, ditto, and again, congratulations on your PhD doctorate. I have read your thesis, and I would recommend it reading if people can get through the information.
I really appreciate that you read it, too, because that's an honor coming from you, so that's fantastic. Well, I want to thank you again, Chris.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with more franchise interviews.